Right. So, hello, everybody. Dina just had a nice, just like a 20-second chat. I don't know what he's going to say next, but I just thought I'd introduce this segment of the show, which sounds like Alan Partridge. Aha. But anyway, what happened as recently is that we were in Glasgow on Friday, and something happened in relation to the fact it's getting pretty obvious now that the Jehovah's Witnesses associated with karting in Glasgow clearly are big fans of the channel. So, hello, everybody. Hello is monitoring the channel just to see if they get a name check. And this became obvious definitely not the last time, the time before, because I had a video taken down. I just thought, why would anybody be watching this channel to take down a video? Now it's obvious from what happened on Friday. But I just wanted to make this point clear for those in the Glasgow congregations who are fans of the channel in relation to recording, because both yourself and I have done a lot of um, chatting to carters in the past few years. And the problem with that is sometimes the conversations can go on for like 10 minutes, 50 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. And when you try to recall the conversation, even later that evening, my memory is not what it used to be at all. I'm losing so much stuff now, and I forget what happened. And then I do the video, and then after the video went out, I went, oh, I forgot they said that bit as well, and it's too late to go in. I don't do what certain other guys put stuff. It literally what you get, what you see, what you get, and that's it. I'm not going to go back and edit it at all. And so I've tended now to record them because then there isn't any dispute of whether what I said happened didn't happen. So there's utter no, it's complete transparent, utter clarity that I asked a question or somebody asked me a question, I gave my answer and the other person gave the answer. So there's no disputing what was said. So people do get an understanding of my mannerisms, what I'm trying to say, and the genuineness of the question. And I don't try to get angry with people. I try to do it as pleasant as possible. Sometimes the people on the other side aren't. That niceness is not reciprocal. So I started to recall them because then it was obvious then how the conversation had gone. So I'm not just relying on my well dodgy memory these days. And I thought it was working well because then people could see from me and from yourself how genuine we're trying to be, and we're trying to ask questions in as nice as possible and doing it in the best manner that we can. Now, the end of the day is if Jehovah's Witnesses are on these videos, either audio or we snip it off the feet or half of the head. If I was them I had nothing to hide from. If I had nothing to hide from, I would welcome this opportunity for other people to watch this channel who may be doubters to listen to and say, the witnesses got him then. All those witnesses told Terry and Dino there, they asked the question and they reasoned from the scriptures, and Terry and Dino went, yeah, you've got me. And this is the problem here because it seems as though they don't want to answer the questions, although it's simply they just want to refer you to a website. But when we're standing in front of them, genuinely wanting to get answers to questions, and the question that we're trying to get answers to again on Friday was relating to the change in the blood, because I asked somebody in Kitford a few weeks ago, well, it'd be about 6, 7, 8 weeks ago now, and the two women there, one woman hadn't heard it, and the other one claimed it was because of dramatic change in medical procedure, which is complete nonsense. So when me and yourself were out in Glasgow 5, 6 weeks ago, and it was just like, what was it, a few days after the memorial, we asked two people there. One of them said, the guy said he'd watched the video and agreed with it. But he couldn't understand what he agreed with. And when we said, can you try and explain it? And he says, well, to be fair, I only watched it the once and I haven't really done any research. I've just agreed with it. And the lassie hadn't even watched it. So this is a fundamental change in which lots of people are talking about worldwide in relation to storing your own blood and then being able to use it for your own medical procedure if you need a blood transfusion. When beforehand you couldn't do that. So of course, all this is coming from a book which is like compiled 2,000 years ago of an organisation over the past since they did the blood issue have been quite clear when it comes to the blood. No, no, no. If once you leave your body, you can store it. And we're trying to get clarity. So if you can store your own blood, why? How come you can now do that? What's changed? What new scriptures none of us have ever seen before? Obviously, Jehovah's been hiding them out. Where these scriptures come from in the book we've had for like 2,000 years, and if you can have your own blood, why can't you have somebody else's? Like maybe a sort of close relative whose blood matches me. You have a twin. Why can't you have that blood? And they were the answers we were trying to get. But unfortunately, as you may have heard from the video that I did put up this afternoon, we were shut down very, very quickly. It was a case of clearly the witnesses, hello, the Glasgow fans, that we were shut down because they recognised me and you straight away. They're going, Terry, Dino. And they know straight away. And the guy just says, I'm not speaking to you because you're recording our responses and I'm against our consent. You can't do that. And basically, they just picked up the cards and they were off ski. And if we would then approach them again, it'd be it'd be going for it'd be very, very silly. It'd be like a Benny Hill sketch. So I've given them a thoughts on what happened because the person that I met, Dina didn't know as well, but Mags, who I met,
Really know her.
you didn't know her,
Didn't
I
know.
didn't know her. Well, I'd known her but I haven't seen her for 25 years. She came to my house plenty of times. We used to play a Trivial Pursuit music competition, and I was two teams. I was the head of the other one, and she was the other one, and she always won because her knowledge on music at that time, I don't know, it's like now, was I thought I was pretty good in music, but she always used to get them really annoying that Mags and Team Mags always beat Team Tell. But anyway, I'm going to hand it over to Dina because I said to Dina, look, this whole thing about filming and recording people in public, which the Jehovah's Witnesses keep on saying, they came out with that statement with no basis for, according to this and that, and the other, you can do that. And we're thinking, where are you getting that from? So, for the sake of us, if we do this again, or any other people out there who do record the conversations in Glasgow or anywhere else, it would be nice for us to actually know. And for the Jehovah's Witness Glasgow fans, hello, big fans of the channel who may be watching this, because I know they will be watching this, is for them to watch this video and go, yeah, we can use that one again. But again, they might be able to use that one based on Dina's research. So take it away.
Yeah, well, did a bit of research on the internet, just asking the question about filming, video recording in public spaces, and the kind of gist of there is no basic law against filming in public, right? There isn't a specific statute as far as I could see from the internet. But what was coming through was that um, you can't video vulnerable people. So, for instance, children.
Right.
You can't sit in a play park and sit for hours filming children, young children especially. That's a no-no for obvious reasons. So any vulnerable group, you wouldn't be able to video. So that's an exception. Um,
Mm,
you can't be videoing in public if you're stalking or harassing individuals or groups, right? So if you're being a nuisance, harassing people, you can't do that. And of course, permission would always be required if you're filming on private property. So, for instance, I'm sure we've all seen these videos where people go to a Kingdom Hall meeting and then they suddenly stand up and they start um,
yeah.
questioning things and they're filming it. So, strictly speaking, that's wrong because you would need the consent of the Kingdom Hall to do that filming because you're on their property, right? So you couldn't just do that and expect to film what you like. So in any private property, businesses as such, like you would need the owner's permission to film. Um, it also said that no one has the right to demand that you delete any footage. So, you can't say, oh no, delete that, or take your recording equipment off you. There's no right to do that. So basically, filming in public, as long as you're not contravening those issues, then you don't need consent. If you're walking down the street and you're filming, have you got to get the consent of every single person that passes past you that's in camera view? No. However, it did make the point that if you're involved maybe in an interview situation, then you would. But I think it was talking. You would need the consent of the interviewee. But I think that was some of the websites were relating to um, more kind of formal business type filming and recording. In certain situations, you would need the permission of the council if you're doing video recording maybe for business or commercial purposes, that sort of thing. But that doesn't really apply to our situation. Now, this is the main thing. It says that in public, consent is not really required. However, there is consent required where there is, and this is the point, this is the legal term that I could find, if there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. So even if you're in a public space, if there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, then you would have to give your consent to being filmed. So it'd be a kind of situation like, for instance, you walk into public toilets, to relieve yourself, and someone follows you in and tries to video you. I mean, although it's a public place, there's
Yes,
a
yeah,
reasonable expectation of privacy in that
yeah,
situation. Or
yes, yeah,
maybe sitting in a restaurant. I'm trying to think of examples. Or maybe you're dining outside on the pavement, maybe in a restaurant, but you're in the pavement. But you're at dinner, you're eating. So although you're in a public space, you might, in that circumstance, expect reasonable privacy to be accorded to you. You
yeah,
know. So that's the exception. But this is a point. If you're standing in a public place as an individual or a group and you're involved in a public preaching campaign,
mm,
you're trying to draw attention to yourself and you're trying to get people to come up and speak to you. So if
yes,
you're doing that, you cannot then rely on there being a reasonable expectation of your privacy in that situation. You're specifically there to publicly draw attention to yourself and to make yourself available to the public. So I don't think if they're doing that, the Carters can't really say, "Oh, we expect a level of privacy in this situation." No, I'm sorry, but you're in public and you're drawing
mm,
attention to yourself. Um, Also, I saw bits where it was saying that if you're recording a conversation and you're part of that conversation, then you've every right to record a conversation that you're a part of. Right? If
yes,
you're simply recording somebody secretly, just what they're saying and they don't know about it, then that would be wrong. But if you're having a conversation, you can record your own conversation that you're having. And on Friday, you weren't videoing, you were just recording the
yeah,
audio,
the audio,
right? So
the audio,
yeah, so we had made that concession from the previous time that we'll just record the
yeah,
conversation.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, Another thing is the internet had said that not to mock, harass, or intimidate. So, you know, sometimes it's very easy, I have to admit, sometimes it's very easy to maybe mock a little when you get some of the responses and the attitudes, and not to kind of be mocking of it, but we don't approach people specifically to mock them. We
no,
don't
no,
approach the Carters to harass them or intimidate them. Um, we don't walk up to them and say, "You're a bunch of apostates, you're a bunch of heretics, get lost," and all that. That would be harassing and intimidating them. We don't do that. We approach them and we say, we want to ask you some questions. What are your views on this? Can you explain
Yeah.
this? We don't even generally go up to them and say, well, this is what the truth is and this is that. We basically say to them, why do you believe this? What's your current understanding on that? So, um, and lastly, the one thing that came out was that you can also video to protect your own position. You mentioned this about you can show exactly what was said and what wasn't said, but at the same time you can also protect yourself in the situation because we've been shown aggression by a number of
Yes.
carters, a number of elders. I've
Yes.
twice
Yes.
been physically
Mm.
almost assaulted by an individual, not an elder, but twice almost, well, kind of threatened physically by a
Yeah.
carter.
Yeah.
And the elder on Friday, as you said, he was really quite passive
Yeah. He
aggressive,
was.
really kind of bodily up to you, ready to sort of
Yeah.
grab the camera off you and such like.
Yeah.
He was quite aggressive. So you could record in a situation like that, so that you've got evidence of anything that's committed an assault or anything against
Yeah.
yourself. Um, I also did a quick question on my AI about this whole situation about in Scotland, can you legally video or audio record your own conversation with street preachers in a public place without asking their consent? And basically, the AI came back and said yes, because public streets carry no reasonable expectation of privacy. There's that expression again. No reasonable expectation of privacy in a public street when you're doing a public preaching work. You're a party to the conversation, so recording it is lawful. And Police Scotland explicitly states it is not illegal to take photographs or video footage in public places unless it is for criminal purposes. So I think we can basically say we're not doing it for any criminal purposes. So
Yeah.
from what I can get from the internet and from the AI search and all the references, basically you can't film in public, and they can't rely on a expectation of privacy doing a street preaching, so that covers that. I've just got a few comments on Friday, just that kind of noted
Okay.
down. First of all, I, for one, didn't feel deflated that they basically wouldn't speak to us. Um, I was disappointed because, as you know, we both love talking about these things. And we've also said to each other before, um, if we could be convinced that it was the
Yes.
truth,
Yes.
we would go back
Yeah.
if
We
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 could be
we would go
convinced it
back.
was the truth. Yeah.
Yep.
So whilst we are genuinely trying to show them their errors, because we don't believe they're right. So while we are
Yeah.
trying to show them their errors for their benefit, at the same time we're taking the view, well, maybe if we're wrong, point it out to us, you
Mhm.
know, show us where we're wrong. Um, but the fact that they just won't engage and they would rather move away than try and answer your questions, I'm sorry, but they've got to think. I wonder how they felt going home that night. Did they really preach the word boldly? Did um,
Honestly.
they fearlessly? Did they really perform a ministry? Um, or are they just counting time standing on a street corner with people walking past them? Um, and as I pointed out to them again, a council of 1 Peter 3, verse 15, I read it from the New World. Um, it says, always in your hearts, always ready to make a defense before
Yes.
everyone that
Everyone.
demands of you a reason for the hope in you. Right? So I said to that elder, I says, you're an elder. I says, you should know that scripture. You should know that it obligates you to make a defense to everyone who demands it of you. And it also says, but doing so together with a
Yes.
mild temper and deep
Miles.
respect. We weren't getting a mild temper from Brother Elder, um, nor deep respect.
No.
You would think, if it was two Trinitarians or two, Pentecostalists or whatever, um, that were there and attacking them, that would maybe be different. But for two brothers, as you pointed out, not disfellowshipped, not
Yeah.
disassociated, you could
Yeah.
say just lapsed witnesses,
Yeah.
right? Wouldn't you take the opportunity to answer their
Mm.
questions and
Yeah.
show them, explain to them? But no, an elder just, a passive aggressive and then walking away and just refusing to speak to you. Surely two former pioneers, public speakers, you would think that would be a good bet to have a chat with and maybe be able to win round. Um,
Yeah.
right, let me see. Yeah, I was listening to the playback of the audio that you put up today, and I thought it was funny. Yeah, I was asking at the time the question about the blood, and I think the next thing you can hear is the sound of the wheels of the cart trundling along the pavement. And I thought that says it all. Hearing those wheels turning, they were off. Mags brought out the apostasy thing again, and I was asking her to define it. She wouldn't define it. Um, Again, I've looked at the internet. There's lots of different ways of defining apostasy, but one of the ones I found was it says it makes an apostate is a deliberate turning away from God, right? Now, Mag's never asked or doesn't know what my views are on God, right? She doesn't know if I've turned away from God, or because as I've said to you before, I still believe in God, not necessarily the God that's explained by the churches and by the witnesses, but I do have a
Yeah.
belief in
Yeah.
God. But apostasy is a deliberate turning away from God or rejection of core doctrines and separation from a church. But when you think about it, the Apostle Paul, well, he was an apostate from Judaism. You read his writings, particularly
Yeah.
Galatians and Ephesians, he basically apostatized from Judaism, right? But yet he's a Bible writer that, they accept Paul as an apostle. And if you're a Jehovah's Witness and you've converted to being a Jehovah's Witness from being a Catholic or Protestant or some other denomination of religion, then technically you're an apostate. You're an apostate from that form of belief, right? And that former set of doctrines. So anyone converting to JW isn't in themselves. They are an apostate in that form. Better the word to use would be a heretic, because heretic is meaning that you are a believer, but you're rejecting certain doctrines, certain beliefs that you believe are not correct. So they should really accuse us of being heretical for not accepting their new light. But at the same time, we could accuse them of being heretics.
Yes.
Because if I was thinking about it, if Brother Franz or any of that old governing body from the late 20th century, 1980s and such like, if they were to be alive today and look at all the beliefs and all the changes, what would they think? You know, would they think, wait a minute, this modern governing body, they've apostatized,
Yeah.
they've become heretics.
They would if Franz and that too, of course they believe they're up in heaven. But if Franz just all of a sudden was frozen in ice and thawed out, a bit like Han Solo, right, and then all of a sudden came back to 2026, and then all of a sudden started to look at the teachings, he would think um, that the wolves have come in and taken control of the flock. he would definitely say that the witnesses have apostatized, and he'd probably want to disfellowship all the governing body.
Yeah. The thing about the blood, if the witnesses are saying that transfusing blood is eating blood, and that Acts 15 prohibits eating blood, then how can you transfuse your own blood that's been previously stored and that not be eating,
Hmm.
but transfusing someone else's blood is eating? So that's a contradiction. So what would Brother Franz say about that? Would he go, "Oh, that's right"? No, I would imagine he would say, "No, the blood issue is the blood issue as we've understood it all these years. The generation was the generation as we understood it all those years. An overlapping second generation, forming one big, And if you want to talk about apostasy, well, the United Nations and the NGO, the governing body signing up as an NGO with the United Nations. If you want to talk about apostasy, then let's talk about NGO with the UN for about 9 years before they get found out.
Roundhouse,
Um,
yeah.
that's apostasy, Mags. That elder, after your audio cut off, I tried to have a further word with him and draw him out. He wasn't having it, but he did say
Oh,
to me, he says, "Your videos that you're distorting
yeah,
the
yeah,
truth, or you're
yeah.
distorting what
Mm.
happens." And I'm going, distorting. There's no editing in the videos that we'll film before. There's no, it is just as it is. There's no
Mhm.
distortion. But if you want to talk about distortion, then if you have a look at the creation book, and the Let Your Kingdom Come book with the appendix. Now, in those books, they're notorious for the fact that in the creation book, they quoted certain evolutionists and they used certain quotes. And when the quoted was pointed out that he was quoted in this book, he basically
Yeah,
wrote to the society, says, "You've
yeah,
misquoted me. You're making me
that's right.
appear to say something I don't believe."
Yes,
And it's the same
right.
with the Let Your Kingdom Come book, the appendix, where they've quoted some archaeologist or historian about the king lists and Ptolemy's canon. And they've quoted them as if to mean one thing. And again, he basically wrote and said, "No, you've taken me out of context. That's not what I was saying at all." So if you want to talk about distorting the truth, then we need to talk about the creation book and the Let Your Kingdom Come. And I remember also they misquoted one of these Pentecostalists that speaks in tongues. They had a quote in one of the magazines doing an article on that, and they've quoted them to basically say that speaking in tongues is all wrong. And again, he found out about it and he wrote to them and said, "That's not what I was saying at all." So, no, the governing body, JWs, have got a track history of distorting the truth. Um, the Mags also said, "You believe what you want, and I'll believe what I believe," which is fair enough.
Yeah,
And,
yes.
because it's no skin off our nose. If you want to believe what you believe, fair enough, and we'll believe it what. But here's the point: you believe what you want, but you've got to hear all the arguments. You've got to hear all the information and then make up your mind, right? Um, a verse again from First John, this time chapter 4 and verse 1, and they like to quote this to apostates, where it says, "Beloved ones, do not believe every inspired expression, but test the inspired expressions to see whether they originate with God." Right? So, what are we doing but testing the inspired expressions? We're saying to them, "Oh, this new light," and such like, have you tested this new light? Have you tested what we're saying, the point of view that we've got, or are you just simply not listening to it? If you're not going to listen to the questions and going to run away, then you're not hearing the whole picture. So therefore, you cannot make an informed choice, right? You're simply willing to simply believe what the governing body are going to tell you. Um, and if you're not taking in any other information, then you're not making an informed choice because you haven't heard the whole picture. You haven't heard both sides of the argument, basically. And that's what we're trying to let them do. And if we were to give our arguments and they don't find it reasonable, then that's fine. You can believe what you want, but at least we've given you and you've listened to another opposing argument, and then you can make up your mind. That's testing the inspired expressions. And she made the point, and I was a wee bit taken back by this, and that's what made me realise that they're watching the videos, because I don't think I've said to anyone, well, not very often, certainly not to Maz, I've never met her before, that I'm a university student
That's
studying
right.
theology. And she says,
Yeah.
I'm not intimidated by the fact you're a university
Yeah.
student. And I think, well, I'm not trying to intimidate you. I've not mentioned it to you, and I'm certainly not trying to intimidate you with by saying that. But when I have said on video here, I'm just making the point that I'm coming from a position where I'm trying to educate myself, and not just simply listening to one source of information. I'm looking at other information to come to an informed choice, through my university studies. And one of the things I've done is, I've done a couple of videos on my own channel about this. Is a book that's going through the various Nicene Creed and Constantinopolitan creeds and going through it line by line. And a lot of the material we've studied in the course is very Trinitarian. Right? They bring the Trinity into virtually everything, and this is supposed to support the Trinity. But one of the things I've done in the course and my essays that I've written is that I've critiqued the Trinity in these sources and given the opposing view.
Yeah.
And the university are fine with that, because that's what they are basically saying, is that you don't just accept anything that's put to you, test it, critique it, and then you find what is the truth, So that's what the witnesses do not allow. They don't allow you to examine other sources of information. Now, on that point, I've noticed, I was studying something recently and I was checking articles in jw.org, and I found an article where it did talk about the Hebrew and the Greek terms relating to the ransom and such like, and it was good information, it was correct information. But it made me realise that, you see, the governing body, or at least the brothers in the writing committee, etc., they're reading all these sources, they're reading all these texts and worldly books to come
Yes.
out with,
They
to
are.
find things. So they're
But
allowed to do that.
we're not allowed to.
But you're not allowed to. And the
Yeah.
point is, they're only feeding you what they think
Yes.
is acceptable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's
What?
yeah. They're just it's their own confirmation bias. It's their own agenda, and they're just cherry picking everything to suit their narrative. That's what. Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, we've only got 5 minutes left.
5 minutes. Okay. So, right. Yeah. So, yeah, I'll just finish on this then. I got some quotes from John Stuart Mill, who's a British philosopher, from his book on liberty. I read this some time ago. Definitely recommend it. So I've just got a couple of quotes I think apply on this point. He says, he who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that. If he is equally unable to refute the reasons on the opposite side, if he does not so much as know what they are, he has no ground for preferring either opinion. So he's saying that you've got to know both sides of the argument.
Yeah.
Nor is it enough that he should hear the opinions of adversaries from his own teachers, presented as they state them and accompanied by what they offer as refutations. He must be able to hear from persons who actually believe them. He must know them in their most plausible and persuasive form. So the witness articles are always saying, oh, such and such says this or believes that, and these are so you're getting it from the witness's point of view. You've got to get it from the actual person's point of view and how they present the information. And he says the peculiar evil of silencing the expression of an opinion is that it is robbing those who dissent from the opinion, still more those who hold it. If the opinion is right, they are deprived of the opportunity of exchanging error for truth. If wrong, they lose what is almost as great a benefit, the clearer perception and livelier impression of truth produced by its collision with error. So what he's saying is that by allowing a conversation with someone that's opposing your view, by hearing that view and allowing the question, you'll either be proved wrong, in which case you've now learned what the
Yes.
truth is. That's to your
Yes.
benefit. But if
Yes.
you're right and you prove the other
Yeah.
person wrong, then you've proved to yourself your
Self.
understanding is correct, and you've
Yeah.
solidified that. Um, so finally, he says, every man who says frankly and fully what he thinks is so far as doing a public service. We should be grateful to him for attacking most unsparingly our most cherished opinions. So he's saying we need to thank people who oppose an opposite
Yes.
view because,
Yes.
the truth will prevail and both
Yes.
sides will benefit from it. So if you're refusing to answer questions and even hear the questions, then really you're running away from truth, you know?
That's fantastic. So, especially to the Glasgow Jehovah's Witnesses, thank you for listening tonight. Dina did a lot of research on your behalf. So, next time you do see us in the street, don't run away. Don't run away because we're trying to present you with for your ability to prove we're wrong, or vice versa. We just want to add a friendly conversation and for you to reason from the scriptures. And next time you go out, why don't you use something called a Bible? It's sort of a big bookish, and actually use the Bible because you don't seem to use that anymore. It'd be lovely to see Jehovah's Witnesses with a Bible in their hand instead of just a magazine standing there like that. It's truly embarrassing. But Dino, thank you for your time for that. I'm sure you've educated me. You've educated all the Glasgow Jehovah's Witnesses who'll be watching the channel. All our top fans there. Can't wait for the viewing count to go up. But it's just got 50 seconds to say thank you, Dino, and it's goodbye from me.
Yeah, thanks, Terry, and it's goodbye from me.
Bye bye.
Bye for now.